Good evening. My name is Maria Cristina Conlon, and I want to welcome all those participating in this meeting of Shining Waters Regional Council of the United Church of Canada. I am the president of Shining Waters, and on screen with me is Jody Maltby, the regional staff lead for Shining Waters Regional Council, who is representing Peter Hartmans, executive minister for both Shining Waters and Canadian Shield Regional Council. We'll take a few moments shortly to remind ourselves of this way of being together before we constitute the meeting. For now, I would ask that you please turn off your video and microphone, and if you are on the phone, please mute yourself. It is with gratitude that we acknowledge the gifts of Creator and give thanks to the nations who for thousands of years have cared for this land. The Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, Ojibwe, Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Métis and other nations who arrived later. Those of us in the region who are non-Indigenous honor and respect this land on which we are settlers. We give thanks to all life that the land supported before and after settlers arrived. In keeping with the dish with one spoon wampum covenant to share and care, Shining Waters Regional Council strives to live and minister in a spirit of peace, friendship, and respect, and to build equitable relationships with all those with whom we share the land. We are treaty people, and we also acknowledge that some of the lands we are on are unceded. May we as a region honor all our relationships and honor the call to actively live in peace and harmony. The first call in our regional mission statement is to live in right relations with Indigenous peoples and respond positively and meaningfully to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission call to action and the caretakers of our Indigenous circle calls to the church. The second is to become an anti-racist church. We strive to make this meeting and all gatherings of Shining Waters Regional Council safe space for people of all abilities, any sexual orientation and gender identity, racialized persons, and all others who are marginalized and have been excluded and harmed by the church. So now we are pleased to share video greetings and an opening prayer from our Executive Minister, Peter Hartmans.
Hello, so wonderful to be with you virtually here tonight. I am on vacation this week, but I pray that you are richly blessed during this meeting today. I'd like to begin the meeting with prayer. Let us pray together. Creator God, we give thanks for our regional council. We give thanks for our many communities of faith, our outreach ministries, our incorporated ministries. We give thanks for the Finance Committee and the work that they've done in preparation for this meeting tonight. We give thanks for the executive and the discernment that they have participated in. And we give thanks for the folks around the circle, for the conversation, for the participation of the Regional Council. I pray that you bless this time together, our discussion, and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I now invite Diane Matheson Jimenez to help orient us to how we will be together in this meeting.
Thank you, President Tina. Good evening, friends. As we begin, I invite us into words that we've shared together before, an invitation to be in community with one another. We can strive for safe space, but we know that we can't achieve it. So tonight, as we gather in community, let us strive to be brave together. And we can do that by being accountable for the impact of our words and our silences, by reflecting on and naming our own biases, by actively listening to one another and to the Holy Spirit in our midst, by vocalizing questions that arise from our learning, and by encountering new ideas with curiosity and with wonder. May it be so. And more practically, some tips to help us work well together in this time. I would ask you to please ensure that your name that appears on the Zoom screen is complete and correct so that we can have an accurate record of this meeting. At various points in the evening, there will be opportunities for you to raise your hand, either to ask questions or to vote. If you are joining us on the phone this evening, I would invite you to practice raising your hand now by pressing the star button followed by the number 9. If you are on Zoom and it's been a while since you've had the opportunity to use Zoom, you will find in the reactions function where to raise your hand. And if you'd like to practice, you can do that now. When your hand is raised, please don't put it down. Staff are on hand to do that for you once either you've been called to ask your question or make your comment, or once your vote has been counted. If you're joining on the phone and you've raised your hand because you'd like to ask a question or to make a comment, when President Tina calls on you to make your question or comment, you can unmute yourself by hitting star and 6, and then when you finished, star and 6 to remute yourself. If you are joining in the Zoom space and you have a question, I would invite you to use the chat box for your questions. It's also an opportunity if you need to raise a point of order, if something has happened that is outside of our rules of order and you'd like to draw attention to that, please type point of order into the chat to my colleague Sean, and Sean will speak to President Tina. If you're having technical issues, Donna is on hand this evening to support you through that. You can send her a message and she will support you through that. We won't practice voting, but just as a quick reminder of how that process works, President Tina will present a motion and will invite questions. When you have a question or a comment, please raise your hand using the reactions section. You can also use the participants list if you're in the Zoom space. If you're on the phone, again, you can raise your hand using star and 9. If there are 2 people in the same household sharing a device, one of you can chat by raising your hand. The other can vote by typing their full name followed by their vote, yes, no, abstention, into the chat. When Tina calls on you, please unmute your microphone and you will have 90 seconds to speak. At the direction of Tina, your time may be extended. If we come to a point in the evening where we are unable to hear all questions or comments in the time that's been allocated, Tina and Jody will determine whether to extend the discussion or if we need to proceed with the vote. Only those who have voting privileges, so those who are voting members of Shining Waters Regional Council, should be participating in the vote. And with that, I turn you back over to Tina.
Thank you very much, Diane. And in the name of Jesus Christ, head of the church, and by the authority conferred on me by the first meeting of Shining Waters Regional Council, I hereby declare this 8th meeting of Shining Waters Regional Council to be in session for the work that may properly be brought before it to the glory of God. We have one agenda item for decision, the 2025 budget, and one for information, which is a brief report from the ad hoc committee responsible for the review of ministry and funding priorities. I invite Jody Maltby to present the financial report and budget for 2025.
Thank you, President Tina. And my colleague Janet is going to be joining me on screen as well. There she is. We're presenting this financial report for your information and consideration. And I wanted to just start by acknowledging a couple of groups of people who've been working really hard on your behalf. And the first is the Regional Finance Committee. This is still a relatively new committee, have been functioning for since June 2023. And they've been working really hard over this last year to help us implement some financial best practices around investments, around income and expenses, and how we manage our work. And there's more that they're looking to do, so we're really grateful to them. And also, I want to express thanks to our Mission and Grants and Mission Support Committee. And this is a committee that's been functioning since 2019. It was two committees and then it merged into one. But again, this is a committee that's done a lot of work to help us think about our funding priorities and how we'll fund, and they are currently in a cycle of reviewing grant applications. So we have a number of really dedicated folks who are helping us to manage our finances and our support for ministry. So I wanted to express particular thanks to them. And to my colleague Janet, who is on screen with me. Janet is our finance administrator. And she also started with us in 2019. And I was reminded recently that she started on contract with the intention that she would work just a couple of hours a week. And it didn't work out that way. As our financial picture became more complex, as we started looking at retaining property, it really became quite an onerous job for one person. And our finance committee has helped us to recognize that we had exceeded the capacity. And so we're really grateful and excited to welcome Miranda McKenzie to our staff team. She's our accounting assistant and bookkeeper who's going to support the work that Janet's doing until Janet retires in June 2025. And to help prepare for that as well, some of my role has shifted to support finance and property as well. And again, this is intended to reflect how much more complex our financial picture is these days. So that's just a little bit of general appreciation for some people who do a lot of work on your behalf. And I'm going to turn it over to Janet, who's going to briefly go over and highlight our financial statement to date. And that statement is available on the website. I'll put a link in the chat for you in just a moment. And then after Janet does that, I will take us through the budget, the draft budget for 2025. Then we'll open the floor for some questions and comments. We've received some ahead of time, and some of those have been answered on the website. I also have an answer to one that's come in just this evening. And then when we've finished all of that, we'll do our vote. So I'm going to turn it over to Janet to talk, and I'll just share my screen, and then I'll post into the chat.
Thanks, Jody. I'm kind of waiting for Jody to see which side of the page she starts with.
Is that the one you want?
That's the one I was hoping for.
And is it large enough that you can see it well?
It is for me. I think it's fine, Jody.
Okay, great.
Okay, this is a snapshot. When you do a balance sheet, for those of you who are not accountants, a balance sheet means as of October 31st, the end of the day, this is what we had. If I did another one today, it would be different. So just to remember that it's not over a period of time, it's a specific time period. We'll just run by it very quickly. We have our bank account, our checking account, we have a savings account. We actually are working, this is part of the finance committee. We are working in consolidating those two Nesbitt Burns investment accounts. In fact, I think most of them have been done at this point. That's what I said. This is a snapshot. So our total cash and investments that are accessible really anytime we need them are $12.7 million. We have receivables of 106,000. That goes up and down depending on the day. So our current assets are 12.8 million. Jody, do you want to, thank you. And we have other investments. We have a couple of long-term investments with TUCC. These were transferred to the region from churches that closed. That's why I've got Countryside and Painswick. Those amounts are earning money. We have some non-performing loans, congregations who have needed some help, and there are loans against their buildings. The prepaid expense, I honestly don't know what it's for. It's probably somebody's Con Ed from last year that hasn't been changed. The promissory notes is the bigger one. You'll notice it's over $34 million. These are properties that have been transferred to Kindred Works, and we have notes because they owe us the money eventually for them. And Jody, do you want to talk about that now or later? You were
Sorry.
going to say something about the properties that we had transferred to Kindred Works.
We can talk about that later, yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. So hold your questions until after Jody says something about that. We have some payables, and that's a normal. We have some accrued liabilities, and those are amounts that have not yet been paid out from churches that have closed. The 10% that can be directed by the congregations. They're sitting there still. I think they may have been approved about a week ago. Checks have not yet gone out. The equities we have, Jody, can you scroll, please? We have some special funds. We have an archives fund. When a church closes, 3% of the 3% of the proceeds from the sales and whatever they have left in the bank goes to the archives fund to pay for the archive storage in perpetuity. The Indigenous ministry support, which is actually capped at 1 million, it's almost there. And I think when we do the transfers from the church we sold in the summer, that we will be there. The regional fund currently has a 6 million cap, and there's a question about that, and we'll get to that a little later. The finance committee is questioning whether that is enough. We have a very small bursary fund, which is administered by the Office of Vocation to help students. Unrestricted net assets are basically our retained earnings from previous years. It also includes those properties that have been transferred. So it looks like we got $36 million in cash. We don't. We have about 3 million in cash there. And our net income to this point in the year is 3 million. Most of that is proceeds of property sales. So Jody, let's keep going. Income statement. An income statement is for a period of time versus a balance sheet, which is a snapshot. This is what we've done January to October. There's a few places before I start that have a double asterisk. Those are amounts that we get or receive. We receive from National Church, but also amounts that we owe National Church. We only have statements till the end of September. And because we have a new staff person, I did not want to do the guessing. This is also the time of year when staff have paid their CPP and their EI for the year. So the numbers change month to month at this point. So just remember, those are only numbers till the end of September. We have used our full assessment grant at this point for the year of $325,000. Our M&S grant is 3/4 of the year's assessment year's grant of 180,000. That has now all been used. Those assessments, those M&S grants would have been paid out the beginning of November or beginning of October. But as I said, this part only goes to The national stuff only goes to September. This is a statement to October. Salary support grant, we receive money from the national offices to help pay the costs of our executive minister and a full support staff between the two regions. We have investment income. And if I had reported October's, which I didn't get the statements yet, it would be higher. The stock market has been doing very well. Managed properties income. This is money we get from rentals of some of our properties, and they are all administered by Toronto United Church Council. The miscellaneous is a small amount, which includes $2,000 from the National Church to be used toward the 100th anniversary celebration. Outreach Ministries income, we receive a grant from PTCC to support the our Francophone ministry and Regent Park Community Ministry. So that's what that is. And also Regent Park is doing some fundraising on their own. Pastoral Relations Programming is basically the income from the clergy retreat and some of the retirees' lunch. Property sales this year, we've sold a couple of, one larger property, one smaller one is a little over 4 million. And income from the regional meeting registrations is $4,700. So our total income is 5.3 million. Now our expenses for the year, affirming things like the Affirm Parade, things we take part in affirming groups, $10,000. Clusters and networks is 300. Communities of Faith Commission, they have a budget of 35,000 and they've spent 6,400 so far. We support congregations when they run into trouble, $10,000. Contingency is are things that we don't expect at the beginning of the year. The executive costs, they're only partly there, and that's because we're still working on allocating the joint executive in-person meeting. Finance costs are my costs and the audit costs. We have given grants from the regional fund, from the region itself, of $119,000. Miscellaneous, I'm going to be quite honest, I couldn't tell you right now without looking it up what it's for. The sales tax, we get a rebate for HST and GST. We have not yet filed for the first 6 months as we have to finish the property sale transactions in order to claim it, but we get 82% of the PST back and 50% of the GST back. Intercultural Diversity Commission has spent just over $3,000. At this moment, we have $8,400 in legal fees. The cost of the properties we manage is $169,000. Our office expenses are $50,000. Outreach ministries, the cost of those outreach ministries includes the cost of the 2 staff that look after those ministries. Our Pastoral Relations Commission has spent $28,000 so far this year. Property sales costs, so that's the not the cost of running the properties, but the cost of selling them. Things like commissions, fees, is $348,000. Our regional meeting this year was in person and it was $57,000. Social and Ecological Justice Commission has spent a little over almost $8,000. Our staff team costs, which include not just salaries, but cell phones and travel and internet and other expenses for them, is $820. And remember, that is only till the end of September. We share expenses with Canadian Shield for certain events. At the end of the year, the amount on the Shining Water statement and the amount on the Canadian Shield statement will be the same. At this point, it's just wherever it's been paid from. Our youth budget seems very small this year, where the amount spent is $3,300. So our total expenses are 1.9 million. Our net income, that's income less expenses, is 3.3 million. So that's the quick run through, Jody, of what we've done to date.
Thanks, Janet. We're going to move on now and have a little look at the budget. Again, the budget's available for you on the web page, but I am also going to share my screen and walk us through it. So we're going to just touch some of the highlights here. So okay, so you can see that all right? So you'll notice that the draft budget for 2025 is the column on the far right of your screen. And I'm just going to highlight a few things from it. And the first thing I want to point out is right at the very top under grant income. You'll notice that it looks different this year. For a few years there, we were trying to reflect an accurate picture of the grants that are approved by our Grants and Mission Support Committee. Not all of which come from funds we ourselves manage. So some of the funds are managed by PTCC, which is the Presbyteries of Toronto Conference Corporation, and some by TUCC, which is Toronto United Church Council. These are independent financial corporations that manage monies that are available for grants. And so when our Grants and Mission Support Committee and our executive approve grants, then we forward those applications for consideration by those two bodies. So as we worked with our Finance Committee on our budgeting, we felt that it wasn't appropriate to show those as income because the money doesn't actually flow through our books. So you'll see later on down at the bottom of the page how we're trying to show that information separate from our budget. I've highlighted here our assessment grant from the General Council. You'll remember that in 2024, it was $325,000, and that amount has been decreased this year to $300,000. On the other hand, our mission and service grant remains the same, although it did decrease in 2024. So that's the amounts available from those two grants. The salary grant also remains the same this year. Below this, you'll see the property income, and this is the piece that Janet was referencing earlier. So when we look at income from property development and rentals here, we're particularly talking about income from properties that have been placed into the regional trust. So the regional trust is a body that we have formed in partnership with the National United Church and with Kindred Works, which is the property development body of the United Church. So our regional council in 2019 committed that we were going to try to retain property where possible rather than always selling property. And our executive has been working quite closely with Kindred Works to set up this regional trust. We've placed 9 properties presently into that. That's the 33 million in property that Janet was referencing in the finance statement. So some of those properties are scheduled for development. And in fact, we have one where development is happening now. And some of those properties are intended to be rental properties. All of them are intended to help provide us with a long-term sustainable income source to support ministry in the regional council. And so the advice we've been given from Kindred Works is that we hope to start to see income from these properties beginning in 2026. We also haven't included any projected sale of property in 2025, just because we aren't currently aware of any that are intended to be sold in the year. It is possible that some of the properties that are being held right now by Toronto United Church Council on our behalf will be sold in 2025. It's always unfortunately also possible that a congregation may close and it may be decided that that property is going to be sold. But as of right now, we don't have any that are that we anticipate selling in 2025. So with the income from investments and grants and other sources, we anticipate at this point that we will need to take just over $1 million from our reserves to meet our budget needs for 2025. As Janet mentioned, we have over 12 million in reserves, so our reserves are quite robust at this time. But our finance committee is really committed to us having a sustainable income source so that we are not spending down our reserves. So that is what we are working towards for our long-term planning. Moving on to our expenses. Most of our budget remains very similar to what it was in 2024. So I just want to draw attention to a couple of key points. First, you'll notice the Festival of Faith. This is a new program for our region that we are hosting in partnership with Canadian Shield Regional Council. Canadian Shield held a Festival of Faith last year, and some of our folks attended it. So you may have been there, in which case you'll know what a great opportunity this is. So we're going to hold a joint Festival of Faith in June 2025. This will be an opportunity for us to gather and be in community with one another, and also focus on faith formation through worship, through workshops, through keynote speakers. And so we have budgeted $30,000 towards this Festival of Faith. Now, it's important to connect that to our budget line for the regional meeting, because you'll notice that it's quite low for 2025. It's only $15,000. And this is because our regional meeting in 2025 will be held online, as this one is. This is an intentional decision that the executive has made, that once every 3 years, or our regional meeting will be online, as an intentional cost savings for us. But also it does open up opportunities for us to gather in other ways. And then right under the regional meeting is our budget for the staff team. You'll notice that is a couple of $100,000 higher than it was in 2024. And part of this is because we've hired a new staff person in our accounting bookkeeping person. And we're currently in the process of preparing to hire 2 additional program staff. One will will fill the vacancy that will be left when Todd McDonald retires in June. And the other is to backfill it will be a 2-year contract to backfill some of my work as my role shifts more into finance and property. And we've intentionally made that a contract position because we just want to, right now, the need for support for communities of faith and pastoral relations is quite high. And we want to be sure that we can provide that support. And we want to see, as we settle into some new staff models and some changes we're making in how we do our work, and as we have a sense that congregations that are currently in transition may settle into new ways of being and not need as much support, we want to be able to revisit this in a couple of years to see whether the staff complement, whether we need that to remain at the level it is, or whether we can reduce our staffing. And I do just want to, I'm just looking this way, because I do just want to highlight one of the questions that was asked prior to the meeting was around how many staff we have. So we have the equivalent of 10.8 full-time positions. We actually have 13 people on staff, but a number of those, 10 of those, in fact, are shared staff positions with Canadian Shield. It's one of the ways that we are trying to be responsible with our resources so that we're not duplicating resources in the 2 regions. Often the work can be shared. And then we also have 2 staff who are deployed into local ministries. These staff are funded through grants to those local ministries, so they're not included in our staff line. And 10.8 full-time equivalencies, I just want to note that between 2019 and now, our staff line has run consistently between 8.5 and 10.5 staff. So this is only, even with the addition of 1 new role, it's still only slightly higher than the staff that we've been carrying. Then the last point that I just want to identify is we have a new line for faith formation. And this is to reflect that our mandate as a regional council, both in our regional policy and in the manual, identifies faith formation for all ages. And we've been primarily focused on faith formation with youth and young adults, a really significant piece of work, but we want to expand that to include more intentionally faith formation with children and adults. So this budget line, our faith formation minister, Sean Redden, is working with our Communities of Faith Commission to implement some work for faith formation for all ages. So then at the very bottom of the page, you can see the grant information that was previously included up in our income. We're anticipating total grants of just over $1 million, and just about 300,000 of that will come from our regional funds, and the remainder will be grants that we'll be applying to PTCC and TUCC for. So that is our financial picture. And I'm going to invite Tina to come back on the screen, and also we're going to include Celio because he's going to provide our timer. So Tina, I'm going to turn it back to you.
So I guess you've moved and seconded? Oh.
Sorry. Now we're going to offer for we do have a mover and seconder, but it's for folks to ask questions and comments.
Okay.
So did I?
Yeah. Wondered.
So it's moved by Alan Holditch and seconded by David Leighton Brown, our budget.
Great. Thank you. So if you have questions or wish to speak to the motion, please raise your hand or type in the chat to Sean. There will be a 90-second limit for each speaker. Please pay attention to the timer on screen. At my discretion, the time may be extended where the circumstances warrant it to allow for equitable participation. There will be an opportunity for a 60-second final comment by Jody if needed.
President Tina, this is Sean speaking. There is one question in the chat. It's from Peter and Penny Wilkins. Are those staff costs just Shawnee Waters Regional Council share?
Yes, they are.
And Evelyn McLaughlin raised a hand.
Hi, good evening. I'm just kind of curious about the fact that you're looking at having a Zoom gathering of the regional meeting. I have found since we've moved to this governance, the time together with other clergy is really missing. So was that taken into consideration? I get about the finances and that we need to save the money, but I'm also looking at our own need for conversation, for connection, and having been retired since just before the governance change, I am missing this. I'm missing presbytery, people, and conference.
Thanks, Evelyn. I think we were hoping that the Festival of Faith would fill that particular need, and actually in a way that we hope would be better, because you wouldn't have to spend any time doing business. It would all be about connecting and engaging with one another So we hope that would meet that need, but I just want to acknowledge that I really hear what you're saying about the importance of that connection, and so we'll certainly take that feedback.
I think we have
Then
Victoria.
Victoria
Stewart.
Stewart raised,
Yeah.
yep.
Thank you. I had previously submitted a question about the regional fund and the capping.
Thank
And
you. Yes.
I think this is the time when that should be answered.
Yes, you're right. Thank you, Victoria. And I had actually done the research on that to answer your question. So Victoria's question was around how the regional cap of $6 million was set and how it was determined. What I can tell you is that it was set by the transitional executive. So when we were shifting from conferences to regions, there was a transitional executive who helped us to create the policies for the regional council. And so we have a policy for a regional fund that was approved by the executive on March 5th, 2019, and then was included in a governance document that was approved by the regional council at its meeting in May 2019. I can't tell you exactly why they set 6 million, although it's very similar to what we had in the former Toronto conference. But what I can tell you is that our finance committee is asking a similar question. Is 6 million actually sufficient to ensure that we have the income that we need to fund the work of the regional council and to fund grants without spending down our reserves? And so the finance committee is going to be making a recommendation to increase that cap. We're kind of just wanting to also see what happens with the review of funding priorities that we're also in process with. And I see David has his hand up. He may be able to speak more because he was on that transitional.
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, I was a member of that transitional executive. The Toronto conference had a fund of $5 million. And the transitional executive felt that the region should have a fund available to draw upon. And it was felt that everything was increasing in price, and so we would set it at a level of $6 million, not for all time, but as a starting fund, with the expectation that if needs increased over time, the region would decide to increase the level of the fund. It sounds as though the Finance Committee is telling us that now is the time to do that. But that's why we had the $6 million figure at the beginning.
President Tina, this is Sean speaking. There's another question in the chat. It's from George Isaac, who says the CRA registered charities lists 9.7 million as income for 2023, which is almost 3 times what you list. Can you explain why?
I believe, without looking at without having it in front of me, that was property sales. The way it's done with CRA is slightly different than the way we do it internally. But I would have to actually look at it at the form.
Maybe would it be helpful if after the meeting, if Janet has a look at it, and then she can we can send an email to you, George, but also put that on the website so that everyone can see the answer to the question.
And Hewitt Holmes raised his hand.
Hewitt, please unmute.
Thank you very much. I am grateful for the presentation this evening, and in particular for the detailed way in which the presentation was made. This is what I had hoped for when we met in person. for the regional meeting, and it's always good to actually get what you hope for. So thank you very much. I wanted to somehow pick up on Evelyn's point about if it is that if we're considering not holding an in-person gathering next year on the 100 year of the United Church of Canada, if we're not holding that, is there a place in the budget that if the region says we actually need to do something, is there a place in the budget that would accommodate such a holding of a large gathering of the region, for perhaps in celebration of the 100th year of being a United Church of Canada?
So we could certainly explore that. The Festival of Faith is scheduled for June, the week right after the anniversary. And I think part of the intention of that was so that we could celebrate the anniversary as part of the Festival of Faith. But I think I mean, again, we're right in the midst of this review to identify ministry priorities. And so it's an excellent opportunity for all of you to offer that input. If what we are needing is in-person gatherings, I encourage you, and we'll hear more about the review shortly, but I just really encourage you to take the opportunity to share that feedback.
And John Joseph Mastrandrea raised his hand.
John Joseph, will you unmute? And
good. I just wanted to say I'm a co-chair of the Festival of Faith Planning Committee,
good.
so I thought I'd speak to that. Yes, I love to meet. I'm an extrovert. I love to meet in person and squeeze and hug and say hello to many people. And we have great things planned. 3 days. John Bell is our keynote, so hello, welcome, singing wonderful things. Sudbury, I've spent 3 years in Northern Ontario, so what a great way to get together from Canadian Shield and Shining Waters for 3 days, and I tempt you to come and invite you to come and join in that wonderful time of celebrating 100 years. The theme is God Never Sleeps, focusing on that, and also Welcome to the Rock, which, as you know, Sudbury has lots of those, and we'll be having, again, lots of interesting speakers and singers. We're going to be showcasing the new hymn book and all the songs that come from that with Lydia Smith and many more. So I encourage you to sign up and join up, and great convoys coming from Toronto. Remember, it takes longer to drive to Eglinton, where I minister, than it does to drive to Sudbury sometimes, as you know, with all the traffic. So enjoy great outdoors, great spaces, and a great time to gather. That's my pitch for the gathering in Sudbury. Yeah.
thank you. If there are no more questions or comments, we'll move to the vote.
Okay, so we'll just get the motion up on the screen for you, Tina. There you go.
So it is moved by Alan Holditch and seconded by David Leighton Brown that Shining Waters Regional Council approve the 2025 draft budget as presented. You have heard the motion before you. Only those who are lay or ordered members of the region may vote. If you wish to vote yes, please raise your hand now. For participants on the phone, please use the *9. If there are multiple users sharing a computer, please type your vote in the chat to Sean.
Madam President, those votes are counted.
Thank you. Now, if you wish to vote no, please raise your hand now. Those on the phone, please use *9. Those sharing a computer, please type your vote in the chat to Sean.
President Tina, those votes are counted.
Thank you, Njo. If you wish to abstain, please raise your hand now. Those on the phone, please use *9. Those sharing a computer, please type abstain in the chat to Sean.
President Tina, those votes are counted.
Thank you.
Madam President, the vote is 58 for, 3 against, and 1 abstaining.
Thank you. The motion is carried. At our regional meeting in June, we approved a motion directing the executive to form an ad hoc committee to conduct a region-wide review of ministry and funding priorities, with regular reports to the executive and a final report with recommendations to the regional council at our meeting next October 2025. I invite Sarah Lowe, Chair of the Ad Hoc Committee, to unmute yourself and provide a brief update on the work of the committee so far.
Thank you so much, Tina, and good evening, everybody. So yes, I'm the chair of the ad hoc committee that was formed after our regional meeting last year. We have met 3 times. We're a small but mighty committee. We did report to the executive last week. So we met that first benchmark that was set for us. And what we have done is we have consulted with the commissions and the committees and PTCC and TUCC and the General Council as to their priorities. So they listed all their priorities for us. And we gathered all the priorities together. Thank you, Jody. And then we talked. And so what you probably have seen is we collated all the priorities and we have put them together into a consultation that has gone out to, it's already gone out to every community of faith. So if you have not received it, please let Jody know. So you should have received something in the mail, I think last Friday. It went out to everybody, and it is this is your opportunity, okay? This is every community of faith's opportunity to say what is your priority. There are 11 priorities that are identified, and you have the choice of putting all your 11 points to one of those priorities, and then you also have, you can put those points. So you have 11 points to use to vote, and you have 11 points to assign to what you feel are priorities for you. There is also a place on the form where you can add additional comments or an additional priority that you think was missed. But this is literally, this is the time. This is exactly what everybody asked for. And so we're really pleased. We've already received, I think, eight responses back so far. You have until the end of January, but I do urge you not to wait that long because Christmas is coming and everybody gets distracted around Christmas. So please take the opportunity to take a look at the consultation and meet with your board. However you want to do it, please take this opportunity to do it. And do I invite questions? Postal strike likely. So it is online. If you have, I think if you had an issue with the online form, you could, in theory, mail it somewhere. You could print off the form. So it's actually very easy. there is a PDF link in that was attached, and I used it to print off the form so that I could pass it around my entire board and have them read it rather than looking at it on the screen. So you can certainly do that. You know, we will accept mailed in versions, and then we will collate those as well. And so you have until, they won't be on strike till January 30th. So yeah.
I see a hand from Victoria Stewart.
Yeah. Victoria?
Thank you. I was involved in making the amendments to the motion to add some deadlines. And thank you for being responsive and meeting those deadlines. And I do appreciate that this is a difficult task. In my own community of faith, we will be taking this very seriously. I can advise that we have arranged for we will be having a community of faith after church educative chat explanation, and we will be soliciting from our own community of faith the same survey, and then looking at that and using that at our governing council level to respond to the region. That's just one approach. But what I'm having trouble with is the weighted aspect of this, which is interesting. If I were a real statistician and knew how to do analysis, I could probably be much brighter about it. But since you give the concept that some community of faith may plop everything into 11, boom, that's it. That's where all of our value is to go. And as opposed to something maybe different, and then you try and understand and tabulate that. I think it could be hard or difficult.
We did discuss this quite a bit, to be honest. This was one of the pieces we did discuss quite a bit. And I think we felt that this would be the best way to, and also kind of, I don't want to say the briefest way, but kind of the most simplistic way to have everybody. So if somebody says, I assign all 11 points to number 1, it depends on how many people assign all 11 points to number 1. That's really, and so then it really is, we really are putting this out to all the communities of faith. And then also it will be put out back to the grant recipients and to TUCC and PTCC. So I believe this is the fairest way of doing what was asked of us, to be honest. And we all kind of agreed this was the best way to go about it.
So you are going to do some tabulation, and then that will be shared. And I did get that it's from one community of faith. It's just that in our community of faith, we want good feedback as well.
Of course. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Oh, and I was actually responding to a question in the chat when I said
sorry.
This. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that question. And I'm not sure if there's any other comment, but having completed the business before us, I declare this meeting adjourned, and I've asked Kim Riavikai to give us the blessing.
Thank you, President Tina. As we meet this evening and look to the future, we are aware that we do this in a context of global turmoil, of climate crises, and grief, and congregations who may be uncertain about their future. And so we hold on to hope. We close this evening with a blessing from today's Believe Out Loud Facebook post. And it says this: God's love is eternal and unconditional because God is love. No matter who you are or what you faced, know that this love surrounds you, fills you, and is with you always. We are cherished beyond measure, just as we are. Embrace this divine love today and every day. Be God's love in the world, and go in peace. And you are welcome, as we often close our meetings, to unmute yourself and make a joyful noise and bless one another.
Oh, with God.
God bless you.
Go in peace, everyone.
Go in peace.
Go in peace.
God bless everyone. Thank you.
Night. God bless.
Everyone.
So wonderful.
Thank
to
you.
be able
God
to
bless.
spend.
Peace and blessing to all of you.
Thanks for those who put it together. That's wonderful.
Peace in the Lord. Good night to all.
Salamat sa inyo.